Hi, I'm Chris Pearson. I'm the lead world builder and, as you can see, lore monkey for Lord of the Rings Online. I'm here with Corey Olson, the president of the Mythgard Society, and Michael Drought, the professor of English at Wheaton College and author of several books about Tolkien. We're here to discuss lore in the context of Lotro, and specifically the adaptations, the challenges of doing an adaptation of something as expansive as Middle Earth to game form. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about how you're both players of the game as well, mm-hmm. How you've experienced those particular challenges of adapting the stories.
But it seems, one of the obvious initial challenges, right, when you think about how to set up the Lord of the Rings world, to set up Tolkien's Middle-earth in game form is magic, right? That's sort of the first, one of the first obvious challenges to confront, since magic, and especially combat-oriented magic, is such a huge part of the fantasy gaming world and such a major expectation of that audience. But of course, magic, and this comes up all the time, and I'm sure, Micah does with you as well, when talking to students about Tolkien's world and magic and how magic works. It's something it's sometimes almost difficult to talk about, because it's on the one hand you can say that magic is prevalent in Tolkien's world, and yet it's so often invisible. You don't get, you can go with Sam halfway through the quest and still have him saying, "I would like to see a bit of magic." Right?
Well, yeah, there's a Hungarian scholar named Gergely Nagy, a really good scholar. He had argued that you could explain away almost all the magic in Lord of the Rings by technology. In other words, you say the ring is a technology kind of thing. It's got also, there's an actual thing. It has rules it has to follow. And I do point out that the Mirror of Galadriel is hard to to rate, and the Gandalf breaking the bridge with the staff, they're hard to explain away. But and magic is not something like that everybody has. And obviously when you play, thinking about original Dungeons and Dragons or something, people want to be magic users, right? And they want to
actual spell.
They want to cast magic missile and other things like that. And so that's and you had that. I'm sure had that problem in designing it, because hobbits don't do magic, and most elves, only a few elves seem to do magic, and dwarves don't do magic except in making cool stuff. So
the dwarves of yore made mighty spells, but
and that is true. They made mighty spells. We don't know what the spells are about.
We don't know what that was about, but
but see, even there,
door opening,
right? Door opening, but also clearly the weaponry and armor that the dwarves make, is it magic armor? Again, that's vocabulary that Tolkien almost never uses. He rarely calls, a sword a magic sword. It would be called a sword of worth, for instance. Mm-hmm. Does that mean it's magical? And again, I always keep coming back to that conversation with Sam and Galadriel, right? What do you mean exactly by that word when you ask? Is it? Is it magical? So there's stuff there. I mean, there's things which can certainly be understood in a magical sense, but but actually integrating that, I can see how that's a really big challenge.
Yeah, and that was why it made Lotro a bit more difficult to do compared with almost any other fantasy MMO property. Because of that, because there's 5 wizards and that's it, and and some people can be one of them. Elrond and Galadriel can kind of do some stuff, and but there's an expectation in the gamer community, and at this point, rightly so, that you would have the ability to do supernatural or at least extremely powerful things within the context of the game as a player. Because if your whole experience is hitting people in different ways with a sword, that takes a lot of the variety out of the gameplay experience. So our intent from the get-go was to say, okay, there's going to be stuff that is magic in the game, but we are going to try to couch it in the various classes in things that are more familiar in the Tolkien context. So things like the captain has a lot of a lot of basically magical abilities, but they're all about rallying people's courage and giving them strength to move on. And the minstrel, it's all the power of song, which song, the music being very important to the Tolkien mythos.
Right.
And the lore keeper, again, there's a little bit of Radagast kind of stuff in with him. We tried to keep away from the really flashy stuff and more the burning acorns kind of Gandalf-y magic. And it wasn't really until the Rune Keeper that we found ourselves standing at the line going, do we step over this thing? And then people start throwing lightning bolts around, because there was a genuine call for that in the player base, and we were like, okay, well, let's just find a way to make this work. And number one, we restricted it to the sort of the elder races, the elves and the dwarves,
right.
And we couched it within the power of language. So at least there is a basis to it in the things that were important to Tolkien. It's not just a magic user; he's someone who uses runes to do powerful things. And it's all to an extent, it's kind of just a mask put over a magic user or a healer or what have you. But it's all important to try to keep it within the realm of the mythos, while still realizing that we're making a game here, folks.
Yeah.
So, what interests me then about that, and you and I talked about this before too, Chris, about how that you have to make it a playable game. You have to make it that there's something that's fun to do. You can't just say, hey, real time walking through the Brownlands or through the Lone Lands, or let's walk to Rivendell, it will take a month. So people are, what is the calculated speed of people on horses is over 70 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah,
because so those are fine. I'm more interested in some ways where the opportunity to expand beyond the things that you see actually helps flesh out and improve or think through rigorously what would have had to be on the outskirts of the things we see if it was a functioning society. And the one that this really caught me when I was a fairly low-level player and learning was Trestle Bridge. The community of Trestle Bridge, and there's a giant bridge there. Because you start to think about it, if these rangers, are spending their time guarding the Shire against bad things, which, by the way, there's plenty of bad things in the Shire in the game. Like, I got eaten by bears hundreds and hundreds of times, right? I mean, you
gotta stay away from
absolutely
bears.
Seriously, because I was one of the, your stereotypical terrible players in that I didn't really pay attention during the demo and didn't follow the, so I didn't realize the whole thing with elites. And there's an elite black bear that, honestly, that thing killed me every day for I had nightmares about that bear. I was running away from this black bear because, you'd be doing okay. And also I didn't know anything about crowd control or aggro or anything. So I'm like a hobbit hunter. I'm in there, killing bears. And then all of a sudden, first there's 20 bears all over you. And then second, the black bear comes. And so, but that aside, what I realized is that the rangers, they have to eat. Somebody has to make clothing. Somebody has to there's got to be some kind of trade routes, because there are places you can't grow enough food. And in some ways many ways, you've sort of enriched Middle-earth, which was already pretty rich to begin with. So my question would be, is there anything that you're really proud of, really excited about, where you filled in an empty spot?
Well, I think for me, the one that really made me happy was being able to take Rohan and make it a functioning feudal kingdom filled with not just Edoras and Dunharrow and Helm's Deep and and a whole bunch of grass.
Grass and wandering horses.
There's actual all these lords that answer the call to the weapon take. They have to come from somewhere. So being able to flesh that out, give them all their own stories, give them each their own village and their own mead hall and their own challenges, and are some of them shading toward the Dunlendings because they have ties to them, or some of them in the pocket of Saruman? Do some of them like, do some of them like the freedom that Theoden, being a doddering old fool, has given them? Do some of them, yearn to return to his former glory? Who trusts Éomer? Who trusts Grima? All of that was pretty much wide open, because we only meet a very small subset of the Rohirrim in any meaningful sense in the books. There's a lot of names thrown around, but we only meet maybe 8 guys who have much to do in the story. And so,
and even those, like Erkenbrand.
Well, yeah.
What a great character that we know almost nothing about.
Does Erkenbrand even ever say anything in the books? I'm not entirely.
He blows a horn. He blows a horn. You
yeah.
see him from a distance.
Yeah.
And everybody else goes crazy. Erkenbrand!
and then it's like, oh, you know what? We left Erkenbrand behind.
Right. Right.
So yeah, but being able to do things like that, being able to show. Rather than just hear about it after that, being able to show how Hama dies at Helm's Deep, which I was shocked to find there was never a scene,
right.
Or anything even in the supporting literature about him. I was sure there'd be something in the Unfinished Tales or something, but no.
There's only the mention by Theoden, right? That and they slew Hama, they used body,
Yeah, and that was one that I conferred with you, and you had, I can't remember the particular poem.
Battle of Malden.
Of course, the Battle of Malden.
Where there's the famous line where he says, "I will not step back the space of 1 foot, but I'll stay here and defend my lord, even as he lies dead in the dust."
Right. Yeah, and that was sort of the partial inspiration for that scene, and being able to pull in not just the Tolkien lore, but also. A lot of the stuff that inspired Tolkien to help bolster it. The Wildermore campaign was originally meant to be our ode to our homage to Beowulf, and it sort of developed a bit beyond that, and pulled in some first agey stuff and some more Saruman than Beowulf had, but there's the bones of it are still there, and being able to not just.
It was fun to work with you when we worked through the what would the rank system be in the Rohan army, and I gave Chris a list of Anglo-Saxon words. We have lots and lots of words for warrior, so we could just decide that there's a specialized sense in Rohan, right? So that a thane versus I can't remember a rink and a Garwigan. I don't think you used that one. It sounded bad, but that was neat to think about. When I was talking to I'm teaching a Tolkien class right now down at Wheaton, and when I was talking to my students, one of the things that we keep trying to go back and forth is a line that Ursula Le Guin says that separates Tolkien from everybody else, and she calls it dragons in Poughkeepsie. The idea being that if your story didn't need to be in the magical world, but is all just like the complex politics or whatever of then there's some kind of failure there. And I mean, sometimes I feel that way about George R.R. Martin, right? Like the magic and the fantasy stuff is totally secondary to the Westeros politics. I mean, that's not really an original thing to say. But did you worry that as you're creating some of these really complex storylines and stories of betrayal and politicking and stuff, that you're moving further away from the core Tolkien feel of the text?
I think to an extent there is there are times when it's moved away a bit. But we always try to, like, one of the questions I'm always asking myself when I'm fleshing things out story wise with I want to be truthful here. I'm not the one who fully writes the story for the game. I'm the one who provides the nuggets of story that the content designers build off of to build the full epic and all the quests. But I'm constantly asking myself, okay, now I've got an idea. What bits from actual Tolkien can I pull in to make this story more interesting? How can I get a bit of not magic, but the kind of deeper
the character. I mean, I don't want to give spoilers even for the early parts, because new people will play the game. But I think that the epic quest arc for Shadows of Angmar is so remarkably true to the Tolkienian ethos. It's about forgiveness. It's about that the dark, being violent and angry and vengeful. Look at what it gets you. About how being the player character, about being self-sacrificing. I mean, it is a beautifully done and Tolkienian story, and I wonder how hard that gets to be when you have to juggle all the balls of, say, factions in Minas Tirith or Dol Amroth, and
things have certainly changed since we got out of the area door to Lothlorien, where the players were sort of dealing with, not dealing with the momentum of the overall story.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Right. It gave us a little more leeway to construct these really elaborate plot lines, because the Fellowship's not doing anything. They're hanging out in Rivendell from October, September to December, so something's got to be happening. And now I think it's all about where we're almost being much more the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of Tolkien, but hopefully in a more effectual way, and you don't die at the end. Where you're following along with the main story and helping out as necessary, to stave off the other threats that are not mentioned in the story, but are the things that would have derailed Aragorn and Gandalf and so forth from completing their quest.
Yeah, and I haven't finished the initial.
It's a treat. It is a treat.
Epic quest, but I've been really fascinated at the really careful way in which it's interacting with the actual plot events of the story, and filling in. I have not found it to be really sort of stretching outside to pull things in. It deals with some things which. It does a great job of pulling in things which, like you said, are things which need filling in, right?
And they're in the appendices
exactly,
in many ways.
Exactly. Or even when you read the history of Middle-earth in Tolkien's notes and thinking, what were the other, where were the ring wraiths at any given time? What was the Lord of the Ring wraiths doing while the Shire was invaded?
Being remarkably stupid. I mean, this is what my students, there's just a few places where it strains, okay, we've got them surrounded on Weathertop. Scab. Yes, they have a ranger and a torch. There's 5 of us. We can just let Aragorn beat on one of us and just go take the ring. Game is over. And no. I have an idea. Let's run away and regroup. We'll get them again later. That's a tough one to.
You do have to think.
It actually works better in himself. It works better in the game in some ways because you can fill in the plot holes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of there are times when we're attempting to explain why the heck did this happen in the books, and that's just so it's there's gaps in the story as well as in the world that are that we have the opportunity to play with.
Yeah.
But one of my one of the things I wonder about too, though, is as you go forward and and all the East is moving and everything, you sort of lose the opportunity. It seems to me to do some of the favorite things in the earlier version, the earlier storyline, which was to bring in stuff out of the appendices, like from the past, whether it's Arvedui or it's various Palantiri or previous kings. Is that going to continue to happen?
It's continuing to happen. We're definitely playing with that. I mean, Gondor. When I assembled the full history of Gondor for our story Bible here, my Gondor section was like 118 pages long, and there's just so much going on there. Just reciting to our designers, getting them familiar with the history of say Pelargir alone. Was an extremely daunting prospect, because it's been sacked so many times. It's been there's the involvement.
It was sort of almost like the seat of power.
It was the seat of power for a while with both of the Ship Kings and with Castamere. It was
Cats of Queen Beruthiel.
The Cats of Queen Beruthiel.
Are they showing up?
I was going to ask that same thing. It's a big question. Right? Are you going to have to want to know?
Cats of Queen Beruthiel.
We'll have to see.
Yeah.
But the they're just out floating on a boat somewhere in the water.
Or they're... Yeah, well, but you have the ability in the game to always do the flashback.
Oh, absolutely,
the
yeah.
instanced,
Being able to do the
material.
flashbacks has been really a lot of fun to get to weave in the moments that.
Oh, and I realize why the Cats of Queen Bruthiel are going to be a problem,
Why?
right? Because they don't actually show up in the appendices. Or anywhere, like they're mentioned, they're mentioned by Aragorn, but I think the actual full story with the colors and stuff is much later.
Is not something we have the rights to because we only have the rights to The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Well, I was going to say, even with Pelargir, you run into that, right? Because a lot of the history of Pelargir also comes, like through.
That can be a very thorny thing.
Alberion and Arendis,
But there's at least a bunch of Pelargir stuff in the appendices. Kinstrife and the.
Yeah, there's enough there, but I don't want to get too deep into the rights issues because
it's boring.
We have to dance around certain factors because they only appear in the works we don't have access to. But when getting into Gondor with Rohan is a fairly short history, although we did tie in a lot of stuff with Eorl and with some of the later kings.
In the field of Celebrant, we were actually picking up bits of rusted armor from that
battle.
Yeah, and that's carrying through into Gondor as well, particularly once we get into the Pelargir campaign.
And you haven't done Ithilien yet, right? You haven't reached
No, we
Ithilien?
haven't gotten to Ithilien yet.
Okay.
We have not gotten to Ithilien yet.
Okay.
So, is there? We got a question,
which is kind of relevant.
What do you guys think of Amarthiel in particular and her story arc? It's probably more of a question for Mike.
I haven't gotten there yet. I don't want to give spoilers, but I thought that a significantly large part of it was remarkably true to the Tolkienian feel of things, right? I mean, I sort of figured out the big reveal, so I won't say that, because you played it long enough, right. and I mean, and some of it is always you run the risk in any storytelling is that you're just not as complex and sophisticated as Tolkien was, because every time that there's like a simple explanation or there's a really complex historical one, he'll take that and your guess. Especially like the Cats of Queen Bruthiel. Okay, what does that mean? There was a queen with cats. They could see in the dark.
They could find their way home.
They could find their way home. And then when he comes up with his story and they spied on people and they brought her secret messages, you wouldn't have thought of that. And I felt like sometimes with the Amarthiel story arc, there were that's I don't want to spoil it, but most of it was really, it was complex, it was sophisticated, the father-daughter material involved there, personally I also thought Tal Bruinen, that region, I don't know if you probably haven't gotten there. It is beautiful. It is well constructed. The mini quests and the quests that help you find the area are really nicely done. And then the epic quest story arc and the stuff that happens in there. Now, I can't talk about it. I'm giving things away. I'm not sure how much Tolkien would have written parts like where someone who's done something bad is imprisoned in this like random output, except anything Gollum with the elves in Mirkwood. So
right.
So that's a long answer to what I think of the Amarthiel story arc. I like that best of all the story arcs.
Yeah,
so far.
it was an interesting story arc for us to develop. It had a really complicated history because it originally came up from there was an executive, I can't even remember who it was at this point, said, why don't you do a story about an elf who's in love with a Balrog? And I went back to my desk and cried quietly but it was like, okay, all right, okay, I'm a professional. Let's see if we can find a way to make this work. And and there has to be a ring. Why does there have to be a ring? Because it's the Lord of the Rings. All right, fine. So we went.
There is no elf Balrog romance.
There is no elf Balrog romance. That got mutated fairly quickly out of it.
That's like the worst slash fiction idea ever.
But it still provided, like, having those bits provided us with the germ to sit in meeting rooms banging our heads against the table going okay, how are we going, let's develop this character, and maybe her story will have some import, and that turned into Amarthiel.
And you always risk, like what I said is the George R. R. Martin part of too much intrigue and stuff. But on the other hand, I think the only way that you can get these things to work in Middle-earth is that the evil has to be working at cross purposes and betraying itself, and that's completely consistent. Right? Just today in my class, we did Ugluk and Grishnok.
Right.
I mean, if the orcs could cooperate, that's over. Like the whole,
Right.
they're off into Fangorn, broken through, they have a diverting attack, they get grab the hobbits, run into Fangorn, story is done.
Yeah.
And
Well, the same with Shagrat and Gorbag.
yeah,
of course.
exactly. I love that Shagrat and Gorbag. Exactly. We killed off everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
Evenly matched until there was no orcs left.
It's a lucky thing.
There are three, and then two, and then
And one of them severely injured, and one trips and breaks his neck. So
Exactly. Yeah. Bit of a tall order for Sam Gamgee.
How about have either of you gotten to Volume 3 of the game? I know you again.
I
You have not, but
no.
the portrayal of the Great Company as we've seen them in Dunland.
could they be as bumbling and witless as they seem on the road to Aragorn? Were they really that bumbling and witless? I think that's a tough call. But just so that we're not just only talking about, how equivalent are all the other Dunedain to Aragorn in knowledge? And I mean, wouldn't there have been? I guess there's the blood of Numenor runs true in all of them, but maybe wouldn't some of every group of people has some that are less competent than the others, and you as a character, I think, have to have something to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
contribute.
if they're completely competent, there's no story for the player to be involved in.
Yeah, the player would be go back to the Shire or whatever, get out of my face. We're trying to sneak through.
Stay out of the way.
Through Enidway.
Yeah.
We're trying to sneak through here without being noticed, and you are making a spectacle of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously one of the challenges, right, of developing the story in a way to not only to be filling in and integrating with the primary Tolkien plot, but to be continually finding ways to integrate the player into the story. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier today. The Paths of the Dead are, of course, an obvious challenge there, right? I mean, there was...
You're like the next group through.
Yes,
The spirits are all like, sorry, Aragorn has already taken care of this.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, we've been set free of our oath, and so it's empty. But
the thing with the Great Company too, I think that makes them seem like they're more bumbling around in Enidwaith and in Dunland is sort of a product of how time has to be treated in our game, where at the beginning of the game when we were up in Eriador and Lothlorien, again, everybody's hanging out, and everybody in the Fellowship's hanging out in Rivendell or in Caras Galavon for a long time, so it can be sort of nebulous when this stuff's taking place. But as soon as they leave Caras Galavon, the story just goes boom right to it takes what, a month or less until they're
sitting on the river. But,
Right.
But once it's especially once they're off the river, it's like blam 3.5 weeks or something until the ring goes in the and so we've had to, as we've released different updates, we've had to freeze time at particular points, and that can potentially have the effect of characters not looking like they're the main characters not looking like they're going anywhere, like while you guys are doing everything, because it's the only way we have to have you fully explore the potential of this area while not waking up and saying, oh, the war's over.
Right. Well, it's especially challenging because not only do things just kind of move along, but people not only do people travel fast, but people travel at record paces. Right. You've got the three companions pursuing the three hunters,
whatever.
And they can't even believe how fast. So what are you going to have 100 player characters running along with them, tying them for the record?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Grey Company going down to Pelargir, right?
Yeah.
They were on this journey of such weariness as none of them had ever known, save Aragorn alone, and all 150,000 of the player characters who are coming along with them. It's hard. It's really challenging.
I mean, there's a certain point where you have to just accept, okay, there are realities of making it a game that.
But one of the ones I thought was incredibly successful was it's a side quest. It's not part of the epic arc, but is the helping reforge Narsil.
Yes.
It's because, and I don't know, you can tell me what the genesis of, but it seems like you had Evendim that would be really hard to integrate with that storyline, given how far away it is, given that there's the haunted city of Fornost there, nearby it. Obviously, it's off to the west, and I thought that story arc was just brilliantly done because it lets you as a player character contribute in a way that doesn't conflict the lore at all, and it makes you feel really. I mean, you have to go now. I have my criticisms of a bus-sized giant turtle. But everything else, and actually it was a fun fight. So that's the other thing too. The game mechanism. Some things it's like we're actually fighting a gigantic turtle and little spawn turtles and stuff. But it's fun. You have to work with a group. So. Those pieces are nice to see. And again, I feel like that one is a good one that fits. I feel like there's a few other that are really true to the Tolkienian spirit of things, where and one of the things, especially if you play as a hobbit. I don't know if it's I play as a female hobbit. It's my daughter's character that I inherited. So So yeah, I'm Alf Sparkle. Hobbit Huntress, but Chris is looking like Alf Sparkle, huh? Alf Sheena was blocked. Yeah. Right. Alf Sheena was blocked, so either somebody had it or it was a disallowed word. But I find that one of the ways that it makes sense in the logic of the game is that people will do nice things for you that they wouldn't do for the Grey Company. Because it's the same thing that happens continually with Frodo, with the hobbits. The hobbits meet someone like Treebeard, and then Treebeard's like, I really like you, hobbits. You're so polite. You're so kind. You help out with things like that, rather than, well, you're an amazing badass hero that killed 75 things. So that comes in too. But I feel like that mechanism sometimes works pretty well. That the character as intermediary between warring factions or something, and you guys have developed a lot of stories there where you go and you help one side, and that lets that one side talk to the other side in some way.
Yeah.
Did you have any?
No.
Okay.
We can.
Since Tolkien relegated most romantic relationships to the appendices and other texts, obviously that's not something that figures fairly strongly into the books, with the exception, of course, of Éowyn and her issues.
Yeah.
Frodo's crush on Goldberry.
Yeah.
Frodo's crush on Arwen. Gimli's crush on Galadriel. All of which are paragraph.
Right, which seems huge.
I mean, do you guys feel that we've done, how do you guys feel we've handled, reinserting more of the romantic stuff into the game and adding to it?
Well, I would even just kind of expand from there. I mean, in the way in which you have, it's like what we were talking about before, but sort of fleshing out the whole life of Middle-earth, not just having it be, these sort of cities and kings and areas that we get glimpses of as they walk through. But as before, we were discussing, how do people live? Where do they get their food from? What are their lines of communication?
They have to reproduce.
Well, not just getting to see the life of a village. The first character I started playing was a guy from Bree, a man from Bree, and I spent. Oh goodness, I don't even know how many hours I spent in the towns in the Breland.
The Breland quests.
Yeah, the Breland. I think I've done every single Breland quest. I think I'm pretty sure I did every single one I found. But again, you get a good sense of the life of the thing, and it's one of the things that I find pretty remarkable is the way in which the game combines both the sort of forward thrust of the epic quest, and there's clearly a sense of proceeding along with a narrative, while also just allowing you to sort of explore the land and the life of the world. And I think that's balanced really, really interestingly and really well.
Yeah, I mean,
that's one of the things I can see being really challenging when we start galloping and running really fast to places at the end of the story. But but so I mean, so things like those kinds of personal relationships, those kinds of again, like just real human life behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I thought in many places was really interesting and really well done.
And part of it too is not just bringing in romantic stuff, but also just showing more women in general than Tolkien does in the particularly in The Hobbit, but in the books in general. And not necessarily involving every single one of them. The women are just there to have a romantic relationship with someone with a male character every time. But there's definitely it's the same thing that happened with Tolkien. Like do any of these characters have a living mother? Any of the characters in the Fellowship have a living mother still? Maybe Gimli.
I have to tell you that I just did this. I was at this amazing event, a long expected party in Kentucky, and it was the Shaker Village out there. They take it over and turn it into, and I mean everyone there is in costume, and they changed the buildings are labeled like the Prancing Pony and stuff. But they had a special event that they called the Missing Moms of Middle Earth, and about 15 women deliberately for this event made costumes of the mothers, either as long as their name or even just said the mother of their. It was really interesting. It was really and it turned into like a fairly big deal of talking about it, and it was everything including Silmarillion and other stuff. But there were all these mothers, the Thorin's mother has to exist because well, obviously all mothers have to exist, but you start to think through it again, and that's I think also testament to the power of Tolkien's. So it's just funny when you said they had to have a mother somewhere. Well, they're the missing moms of Middle Earth.
Yeah. And I think being able to expand the not just talk about a particular lord who rode to Minas Tirith to do battle, but who are the wife and sons and daughters that he left at home, and do they have storylines? And that's does he have is there a romantic relationship because he's a young lord that's ridden off to war? The whole storyline or the whole background that you and I sort of co-devised for Letheriel, where she was actually betrothed. I'm going to give away a spoiler.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm fine with spoilers.
Actually, you know what? She was betrothed, and she was betrothed
to one person
to someone
who might not have been the right person.
Yes, she was betrothed to someone important, and it wasn't Éomer. And being able to introduce stuff like that just helps flesh out the richness of the setting. There's more a question. The next question is more one I think strictly for me regarding Minas Tirith. The size of the White City seems to be something that it's different depending on where it's referred to. The books have it fairly small, but the films have it being massive. And where does this sit with the panel and with Lotro in general? And I think we were talking about this before the
Helm's Deep,
the panel with Helm's Deep, and with a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Everything in Tolkien is kind of smaller than you picture it in your head, I think. And when you're doing an adaptation, that has to play into it. Helm's Deep, for example, the deeping wall is described, I believe, as being 20 feet tall. Which
Treebeard is only supposed to be 13 feet tall.
Yeah, Treebeard's only supposed to be 13 feet tall, which is still huge to a hobbit, but still not that impressive compared with trees.
Right. If you saw a 13-foot tall Treebeard come in, you'd probably be inclined to laugh.
Yeah.
In a film context, he's got to be giant and
at least as tall as
the Balrog. The Balrog is only supposed to be at 15 feet tall.
Yeah, and the size of the Gatefalls of the Cyrenon, that's only supposed to be 50 feet tall. Which, when I actually made a 50-foot tall cliff and looked at it in game, was like, it was just nothing.
Right.
So,
and the Moriador is little.
Everything is small. The Stone of Eric is supposed to be 6 feet in diameter and buried halfway in the ground.
The Galadriel's bird bath is what.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So. And then you add to the fact that just by nature of the game, the camera is hovering somewhere up above and behind the character's head. Everything just naturally looks smaller to begin with. So we have to exaggerate the size of things. And I think it's the same thing that happened in the films, is that you need to exaggerate the size of things because the stuff just doesn't look as dramatic all the time when you do it exactly to the scale.
The assault on Mordor was 6,000 people. I mean, which is a lot if you're a part of it, but not so much to look at on a screen.
Yeah, exactly.
There are many things like that where the visual medium just makes a significant difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this is, this comes to where I don't want to get too distracted talking about this, but thinking about, the Black Arrow in the Hobbit films, right? It's, with Smaug as large as he is, it would strain credibility to see a regular-sized arrow, howsoever black and mythical, puncture that you'd lose sight of it.
Even before the movies, I had a little problem with trying to imagine that.
Well, Smaug's only supposed to be about 50 feet long.
Well, there's that.
That's the thing. I mean, it's like the Beowulf dragon is 50 feet long.
Yeah.
And his pile of gold is supposed to be, a large, like about as tall as a person or something, not acres of gold, and it is the visual medium, and it's the having to make everything bigger, and also Tolkien can get away with things in writing that you can't do at all. He says Galadriel, she became taller, she seemed taller than the mountain, and well, how do you do that on film? It's Attack of the 50-foot elf if you do it wrong. I mean, and
many other things, if you translate it literally, would look comical. I mean, it was
Tom Bombadil.
Well, yes.
Except that I think in the game, Tom Bombadil kind of works.
Yes.
He kind of works.
Where he would not on film.
Because he dances around sort of out of the edge of your sight all the time. He comes through different places. It's at least as much as, I don't think it could work in the film. That's the other thing. The game versus the film is different because the film, the camera controls what you see. In the game, he can dodge around behind you and you can follow after him in different ways. So.
Right.
So one of the things that we're going to be adding to the game in the next update is the Beorning.
Beornings,
as a playable race / class. And I was wondering what you guys thought about that as an addition to the game.
Well, tell me more about it first. I don't know. So, how does you said race / class?
Yeah, you're going to be a Beorning, and there's really only one class.
So that's all. It's
Beorning stuff.
Okay.
So it's a separate race, but it only has the one.
You're
essentially. Okay.
So what's your opinion about adding a character like that to a game to something that's that's much more specialized and is maybe few in number, and
so the emphasis, I assume, is on shape changing. Do you change shape into other things other than bears?
It's on mainly shape changing into a bear, but a lot of very berserkery and wildernessy kind of. I don't want to get too much into particulars because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about, but
that's fine.
Well, once you've sort of departed from I mean, the thing is, it's the Beorning. I mean, not to be critical of the Runekeeper because it's a cool class to mess around with, but the Beorning is more lore accurate than because it's not just Beorn. It doesn't ever say that Beorn was the only one who could turn into a bear.
Right.
Because it says that there's a whole race of the Beornings and they make honey cakes, and there doesn't seem to be any reason that they couldn't turn into bears also. I mean, I think that the argument would simply be that you don't want to cheapen, an enormously cool thing when Beorn actually shows up, but we never actually see it, right? It happens off stage and gets narrated afterwards.
Yes.
But, he shows up at the Battle of Five Armies in bear, and again, I've seen some of the, the art, the conceptual art for the Hobbit film, and Beorn's going to be like 75 feet tall. So he's not going to just be like a big bear. He's going to be, do you want to weaken that? But it's a tough one, I think, for you guys game designers, because you've already had the bear pets for the lore masters. And different kinds of bears. And saber-toothed, I know they're not really saber-toothed. Actually, they're called that, aren't they?
I can't remember.
I don't remember what they're called, but you can have a saber-toothed tiger and a polar bear. And no pandas yet?
No pandas yet.
Ithilien pandas.
Yeah, pandas, yes.
It'll be a special. Yes. Everybody wants a
journeying in from the
down to
east,
hard. We'll do koalas. It'll be great.
Kangaroo pet would be kind of sweet too. But why not? I mean, Middle Earth has like tobacco, tomatoes, corn.
No, tomatoes are written out. Tomatoes were written out. Oh. Tea, coffee. I've done so much research on appropriate foods for Middle Earth.
So I guess the way for me to sum up is that the
we have pumpkins in the game.
No pumpkins. No chipmunks.
No chipmunks. Yeah.
So I guess what I would say with the Beorning is that it's not that random. It's really not.
It's not. I mean, certainly conceptually, I agree. I mean, it's not like the Runekeeper is clearly pushing the boundary, and the
saber-toothed tigers and things like that.
Arguably,
and, or dragging your pet with you all over the place, and that's part of making it a game and making it fun.
Right.
It does remind me a little bit of in Neil Stephenson's book Reamdy. Have either of you guys read it? It's set like half of the book is set in a big successful game, like an enormously successful game, and he said there's two like coalitions in the game, which is the Earth Tone Coalition and the Orange Hair ones. And the idea is that when people play an MMO, they either want it to all be like precisely lore accurate and everybody looks right, or they want to run around as a pirate or something like that. And Lotro has a mix of those things all the time, and your cosmetic armor and your horse, the skeleton horse, which by the way is awesome. The skeleton horse is really cool. And so if you're living with that, I mean, again, I think once you have people running around in large groups and doing Weatherstock and being pirates and things like that, the Beorning is pretty much within the lore.
I can't wait for the first all Beorning band to show up at Weatherstock.
It will happen.
Don't get them angry.
They'll have to have it timed, right, so that they can all turn into bears at the same moment.
It's part of the act,
I think now, from a story development standpoint, in where we are right now in the ongoing developing story of the game, I think the fact that the war has gathered steam made this more the right time, to start introducing stuff like the Beorning, because it gets the feel of more people getting drawn into the overall conflict. I think if we'd launched with Beornings and they'd all been like bumbling around in the
Shire,
in Rivendell and so forth. Not that they won't be going there, but
it's a little bit different than like not being able to take your Rohan warhorse into the Shire.
Yeah.
Because this is a character. You're not going to close off regions of the game to a character. That's the whole part of the whole point is to be able to explore it.
What do you think about the Wozes? Do you have any thoughts about the Wozes?
I have thoughts about the Wozes. I honestly don't know what we're gonna do about them. I mean, they're confined to such a teeny tiny area.
Yes.
I'm also trying to avoid the uncomfortable racist
Yeah,
You know, I mean, that's you and I talked about that, about what you're doing with the Haradrim and the Variags and stuff like that. And you know, and again, in some ways, I think that's actually true to Tolkien, even though it's a departure. But it's like, does anyone really want to be really, really uncomfortable playing the game because of those subtexts? You know, it's a different world we live in than Tolkien's world. He might not have been uncomfortable with it. I think I would. I think most of us would. Like, let's go, you know, slaughter lots of dark-skinned people. That will work out well. But and so I think what you've done is the nice touch where there's, instead of relying on, obviously we haven't seen Haradrim and Variags yet, but what you've done with the Easterlings, you know, with all the blue robes and the specific dress that they have and the connection to lore in different ways, it's a way of handling that. That you know, it's kind of, again, and what it also does for me as a professor, and you know, and Corey too, I think that as we teach this stuff, the ways that you are, the forced moves that you guys make teaches us about the original text in some way and how the text can work.
And this is one of the things that I find so fascinating, you know, and one of the reasons I love thinking about these kinds of things so much, and one of the reasons that I am always really resistant to people who are looking at it from just a totally purist point of view, like I'm not interested in anything that isn't actually in the text.
No paratexts.
Right, because you do learn about the original text when you go down these roads and think through these things. It really does enrich your understanding of that original text. That, you know.
And the thing about the text, so there's I have this argument with colleagues all the time, because there's this sort of vulgar Marxist view that floats in that any text that doesn't talk about economics is, you know, doesn't display the economics is reactionary or something, you know, whatever. Except that what I would say about Tolkien's text, more than say Faulkner, and they got to work with the real world, right? Is that what you start to see from Lotro filling in, from talking about it, is that Tolkien's text is consistent with all the other stuff that would have to go, all the economics, all the, you know, manufacturing of, you know, handcrafts, and, you know, and you've got the little bit of the gimmick that the dwarves can make the high-tech stuff that nobody else can make. So I mean, I assume that all eyeglasses come from wait. Don't you have glass making in the north part of the Shire in Dwale or something like that? There's glass making sand. So even then, you know, and work that through. So in that sense, it also shows that the text is so well grounded in the world.
Yeah, it does. Even thinking about that, you know, thinking about another paper from MythCon this past year about politics and how you can actually apply sort of modern political theory far deeper than you would sort of expect. You know, even though the text is not interested in politics in the same way that George R.R. Martin is, for instance, yet it does. And
think
what is there does stand out.
Like the Kinstrife, which I assume that it's going to to, when you get into Minas Tirith, there are still echoes.
There are still
echoes. People from the north.
People don't forget these things.
The Green Riders, whatever.
Have you?
We're going to have to answer this one, because this is one of my great regrets in the game.
You haven't done. Whether you guys have done the Rift.
I started playing just after the Rift, like when the Rift was huge, but I wasn't high enough level to play it. And by the time I got high enough, Moria came out, and you know, sort of, I've never got to do a Rift run. So I don't, except I know that Thalach is the Balrog in Rift, but that's all I know.
I'm not sure how to answer the question of the question that we're all discussing that none of you can see is what are your impressions of the Rift and the story of Thalach and Glathril, and how do you see that storyline fitting into the actual history of Arda? I mean, we
this isn't Elf Balrog love.
This is not Elf Balrog love.
Okay,
but there is a Balrog involved, and I feel like it was like we were at the time that we developed that, there was a feeling in the design team, I think, that we should let's see if we can get a little bit of the echoes of the first age into the game without like transcending our rights situation.
Right.
And there was a push from outside the design team to include a Balrog in the game that was not Durin's Bane.
Because Durin's Bane is dead.
Dead. Yes, that's inconvenient for us.
No, great Easter egg.
Yes, yes. So when we were told, okay, well, Balrog, get a Balrog in there. We actually tried. We said, but there shouldn't be another one. But it's cool to have one. So all right. So how do we make this happen in a way that actually does some justice to the history of Middle Earth? Because there could conceivably be other Balrogs who escaped the destruction of Thangarodrim. We only hear about the one guy, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't others trapped out there somewhere or causing trouble elsewhere in Middle Earth. And including the figure of the first stage elf, who was essentially the nemesis of this Balrog. We felt tied it more strongly with the history of Middle Earth, and then also furthermore involving a couple of magic users of a certain hue that are basically
unmentionable.
They're unmentionable,
yes,
but we like to hint at them sometimes because everyone knows they're out there.
The two wizards of whom we do not speak.
Yes,
we know that there's two more wizards.
Yeah, exactly.
The color, you have to randomly pick a color.
They're associated.
They might come up
probably
with
with some
color.
color.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, it can be anything really.
Purple and chartreuse wizard. We actually did all we could to take this idea that had been presented to us of you will put a Balrog in the game and make it fit. Give it strong ties to the history to make it feel like it was a part of the overall story of Middle Earth.
Well, I mean, I do think, in general, I really like those kinds of ties. I mean, and I know it's hard for rights reasons. There are so many things that you can't go back to explicitly, but yet I think it's obviously such an important part of the Tolkien world, that perception of depth, that sense of history.
Yeah.
And of course, you can do that within the and you guys do that within the context of the history that we get in the Lord of the Rings, and the background for the regions that we get through the appendices and stuff. But the concept of sort of glancing back behind that to these sort of bigger struggles of the First Age seems to me like a totally defensible thing to do. And the fact is, under the circumstances, you're more or less constrained to make it up, rather than to use the actual first stage lore because you can't.
You have like what, 2 pages in Appendix A, right? Like there's 2 pages of summary of first aid,
right?
And you can get actual name mentions out of there at least. Like the 2 trees, they were once in bloom. Gandalf says so when he's talking about the Palantir. There's a guy named Fëanor. He made some stuff.
There was some guy named Thorin.
He apparently had an unimaginable hand in mind. So
that there's these great heroes. I talked about this in a couple of one of my papers that's coming out. You have all the great elf friends, Hador and Húrin and Turin and Beren himself. And at that point in the story, by the way, the only one we've heard of is Beren. So
exactly. And
Hador, he must have been great.
Yeah. and the other Turin reference with Sam stabbing Shelob,
he's strong.
The hand of Turin. Okay,
I guess he was strong at stabbing and stuff
from underneath. I guess.
Really good at strong stabbing.
Exactly.
Which is great. And then when you know the whole story, right, it's perfect. It actually is a brilliant, reference. But
I like to think of how confusing it must have been to read the books in the 50s before.
Oh no, it was
any chance of knowing
Robert Foster's Guide to Middle Earth gets Turin completely wrong.
I've never read the Turin entry.
Yeah.
It's because he reads the thing from the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, the thing before the Horde, which it might have been about Turin and Mîm with no explanation whatsoever, and then he puts in Turin must have been a prince who invaded a dragon's lair and stole a treasure or something like that, and you can't blame him. That's all the information was there, but it was that misleading at that time.
And with the benefit of what we do is there's all the background material's kind of been expended, so we can make up stuff like that. And
right, well, the cats of Queen Beruthiel could be like her berserk army of cats that she led at the fort. Okay, this is getting, but you can have the cats attack things and claw them or whatever. Yeah. No, I'm not going to be doing that.
Well, though I have to say that someone has asked the question: is there any minor story or mention of a person, place, or thing that I would have liked to see in the game? There's still time. There's still time. When you're on the Anduin, could we please just get a small boat full of cats just drifting down the stream? You don't have to explain it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to interact with it at all. Just a boat full of cats.
Boat full of cats.
There are some Easter eggs like that in the game. One of the things you'll see in Moria that's an Easter egg is Gandalf's hat down at the bottom of the pit, which is kind of awesome.
Is there like a Balrog-shaped indentation on the side of the mountain?
Oh, there's
Balrog. Okay, better.
Yeah,
right. Even
it's
better.
Pretty awesome. No, my minor thing is that in the preface, it says that the Red Book of Westmarch, right, was copied and edited by Findegil, the king's scribe.
Right.
Time-wise, that's probably too late, right? Because it happens. It's after King Elessar, but he could be a young man, just studying or something.
There's still time for Findegil.
I'd love for Findegil and in general the Library of Minas Tirith. I want to see the Library of Minas Tirith.
I want to see the Library of Minas Tirith.
Because I don't think it's what it looked like in the Jackson films. I think it'll be far more organized.
Oh my goodness! And they probably won't let people bring candles in
and the long sleeves. All I could see was half a second Gandalf's like, oh, too bad.
Alexandria.
There goes
Lots
more of the continent.
Tons of scrolls piled up.
That's right. Yeah.
And in fact, that's the stuff that I would love to see. Sometimes we do get to see. And some of it's things that you can't because of unfinished tales, what secrets Saruman had inside Orthanc.
Right.
Don't we get into Orthanc?
We do get into Orthanc briefly, yes.
Yeah.
That's
But what are not just the torture chambers and stuff like that, but what was Saruman his lore books and his laboratories and things like that. And I want to see, the hidden secrets of Minas Tirith and Denethor's tower and stuff like that. Seems to be there's a lot of room for really cool exploration of the story, and a lot of it, again, the I keep calling them Easter eggs, but I don't just little things that are mentioned slightly that then we get to explore in more detail, whether they're in the Shire or in Rivendell or other places like that. I mean, that's one of the fun parts of the game. I feel like that it would be neat. I don't know. This probably doesn't work well with the economics of the game, but it would be cool to have tourist mode that you could just go in and walk around, not do quests. But I know that part of it is getting people to do the quests so that they can unlock and get to the other cool new regions. But now that
it would be as the lead world builder, it kills me that people that there's the stuff I'm working on now is stuff that people have to play hours and hours and hours of game to even get to see. So I would love to see something like that sometime. I saw
tourist mode where you can just fly over everything. You're invisible, and it sort of works for people who haven't played up to a high level. When you get to a high enough level, you get to go back to the low levels and nothing bothers you then, and then you can just stroll around Moria looking at stuff, which is
I have to say, in the areas that I have played, I always am looking. They ask for are there any details that are missing that you would find? I usually find them. When I don't know if probably not everybody does this, but when I got to Tom Bombadil's house, the first thing I did was run around the back to see if there were beans on poles. And there were. We got the beans on poles.
You were the guys who did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of stuff like that, how you the entrance to the old forest and how that's envisioned. Or one of my favorites, because I had real trouble picturing it from the game, is the elf camp in the Woody End. Sorry, real trouble picturing it from the book. And the game, I can see it. That must have driven you crazy. Because that description is not straight. You have to sketch to even get an idea of what he's trying to describe. There's a cutting and a bank and a tree.
I know. I sat there looking at that passage for a long time going, okay. And then I just started trying things until I got that down.
Yeah, no, but I mean, even when I got to Crick Hollow, I was really excited when I got to Crick Hollow and met Fatty Bulger, and was delighted to see. I looked for and delighted immediately to find Frodo's cloak slashed there, sitting on the doorstep, where it was supposed to be. So I mean, I've been uniformly impressed at that level of detail.
I think there are a couple of things that we haven't been able to get into the game for whatever reason that I would like to get in at some point in the I don't know when future. One is the Tower Hills, partly because it annoys the heck out of me that Ered Luin's just floating off there, not attached to anything else right now, but also because then it gives us a chance to see to see the some more like the old elf lands but there are opportunities for that in the future. The other one is we had a wonderful concept, and we just needed, for sheer time constraints, we were unable to do the interior of Celeborn and Galadriel's house in Karis Galadon.
That's right. They're outside. They're not in their throne room.
Yeah, we were going to do that, and it was just like, you do you want to ship this thing on time? Then no. Okay. And Karis Galadon was deemed to be pretty enough to not build this giant interior that would have been strictly to go inside, have Galadriel talk to you for a minute and a half.
I can think of an instance, right, where she tempts you with what you really want and all that, and I have my students and I have some thoughts and questions about Galadriel's temptation and why, and because I think that's what drives Boromir over the edge. But the one I would say that I would love to see, and we talked about this briefly, is the Gladden Fields. Yes. I just want to see what it looks like. Acres of irises. I would like to see that, and the little, Gollum people, and maybe that's where Saruman's river dredging operation is going on, and you have to cripple it. Or, it's a spoiling attack to make him think that maybe the ring. But everyone already knows that the ring is not there anymore. So
but the Gladden Fields is always.
But then have your character, and this is related to the next question about how big Middle Earth is.
Right.
Sure, let's walk over the Gladden Fields, and a month later...
yeah, exactly.
There are certain levels of realism that don't really...
and nobody wants to be making campfires and burying their waste each day either.
Right.
I'm sure someone does. Middle-earth is a vast landmass in the story, and it takes travelers long periods of time to travel between different regions. How do you feel the game mass represents the landmass of Middle-earth? As the person who I've been a world builder on this project with a couple of small hiatuses from the get-go back when we started in 2000, and oh my god, I feel like we've actually, given the fact that we don't want people to have to walk for months to get to from Hobbiton to Rivendell, we've actually managed to create some pretty darn spacious and sweeping areas. It's been a challenge to dilate the right parts of the map and shrink down the other parts and try to get things feeling the right size.
The brown lands. They're large. They're brown.
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
That's right.
Hundreds of miles of them.
Yes. Now, I certainly, from a player standpoint, again, I was playing a Guardian, so I just had a horse. I couldn't really. I've done a lot of just riding around from one place to the other, and I think it takes a sufficiently long. You wouldn't want it to take too much longer than that.
Right. The big
it's
thing
long enough
you sped up travel. It's not that you really shrunk down the landmass, right?
Well, the landmass is a lot smaller than it is in Tolkien. It's a lot smaller.
Proportionally?
It's scaled way down, but it has to be.
But it's not as scaled down as far as Peter Jackson's one, where all of Middle Earth is about the size of Disney World. Which I think is not an accident. Just wait. At some point there will be the Disney theme park, and you'll be able to stand on Orthanc and look over at the Misty Mountains.
Where you can get.
I hope I get to do that one day. Yeah, I really do.
I predict within 20 years. I have no inside information on that at all. I just think that it's too much inside. And rumor has it that New Zealand offered them the land for free if the Tolkien estate said no. But there will eventually be something. You'll be able to ride the roller coaster of Mount Doom or something stupid. But so that the size of the land is big enough. Because I thought that in the films, one of the weaknesses is like, hey, I know, we should go help out at Helm's Deep. Okay, let's go. We'll be there later today.
Yes.
That was, and I know why they did it in the film. They just sort of, in some, I don't know if they needed to do all of it, but in some ways they needed to, and keep the reader up to speed. And it's over there rather than it's 6 months walking that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it
weeks
seems
of
like
steady travel, we will get.
to me, when you think, if you set out now, and you set out at Bag End and wanted to walk to Adoras at normal speed, like not slow walking speed, but just running speed, no horse or anything else, it's got to take you 20 hours.
It'll take a good while.
To walk all the way, through Moria and...
That's a reasonable guess. I couldn't tell you what the actual number is, but it would take you a while.
So, I think that it's, and I know people who have done, like, as a challenge, like the walk to Rivendell in the days each time, and just stop at night and stop and then, go to the next.
Right. I mean, it's certainly, it's enough, the scale in the game is certainly enough to give you a satisfying sense of exploring this region.
It's really big.
It's really big. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, to simply make it bigger for the sake of verisimilitude, so that it takes something closer to 2 weeks to travel to Rivendell from
more of Mirkwood.
I don't think that would be desirable.
Let's get the whole of Mirkwood in there. We can run through dark trees for days and days and days.
4 years.
And the next thing was favorite region.
Yeah, do either of you guys have a favorite region that you've seen or played in yet?
Well, again, my experience has been fairly limited so far, but actually, I really like Breland. I think that it's one of the places that I was always. It doesn't have quite the epic feel, the sort of the mythic standing of many of the regions in Tolkien's world, but it was one of those things that I found satisfying as that there was this sort of submerged desire that I had ever since a child to go to Staddle, and see what it was like, that kind of experience is something I've heard people talk about with Lotro, other players talk about with Lotro all the time. I actually really enjoyed the Brelands in that way. I thought the Breland communities were really fun.
How about you, Mike?
It's a tough one for me because I love the Shire. I love the way the Shire looks. I love walking around in the Shire. It's beautiful. I have a real soft spot for a couple places that apparently many players don't like, which is Eregion. I had the best time playing Eregion. I thought it was beautiful. I loved the landscape and the dry rivers and the big rocks and and all of that. And I love Evendim, and everybody complained about that because of all the swimming, which there's less swimming.
Swimming now, but
now. So that's it's hard for me to pick one because it's hard to separate out like how much fun I had playing those quests, and sometimes it's just that you happen to hit the quests at the right level so that they are just hard enough that it's not just like kill 10 rats and move on, but also not like I'm dying every 10 minutes. I'm so sick. I have to get my armor repaired again. And that was a regain for me. It was just like, it was perfect. And also, I was so excited to get into Moria, so I was, building up there. But I don't know, Shire, Evendim, and or I should really put in a word for Carn Dûm.
Yeah,
that was one of the first things you guys did, and it's still awesome. Carn Dûm.
Glad to hear it holds up. I haven't been there in a long time.
Carn Dûm is still pretty.
I've been looking forward to Carn Dûm.
It's tough. Yeah. It is tough. There's mean stuff there. It kills you all. You need a good fellowship. I still try to do some of these quests that drove me crazy when I was at lower level, and sometimes you try to solo them and I'm just not good enough at the game, or other times you just go back to get revenge. So there was this impossible quest in the Lone Lands that you
I actually just did that in the Barrows.
Did you just I'm going to kill everything here? I don't care.
Because it killed me when I was 15th level, and so I came back when I was 30th level.
There was a goblin named Nishruk, right, that you had to kill in the Lone Lands.
Yep.
And this quest has been redone entirely, but he was in such a way that there was no way to kill him without aggroing everything else, and I needed that quest. And I got killed every night for a month by stupid Nishruk, and I couldn't find a fellowship there. It was the time I was playing on. I still play on Firefoot, which wasn't a popular server at that point, so there weren't enough people. They were all off playing Moria or something, and I couldn't. When I finally got up to level 70, I went and killed Nishruk every day for weeks. I would just come back. I would lay waste to the entire camp. I mean, totally un-Tolkienian, right? There was no mercy at all. It's like, I am slaughtering every orc in this camp. You will all die, and I'm waiting for you to respawn. I'll kill you again. And not maybe I should be proud of that, but that was just how it worked. So there, there's favorite quests and things too, and favorite. Yeah, I like to go back. Sometimes use the reflecting pool dynamic, which isn't used as much anymore because of easier ways to get to instances. But to go back and do some of my favorite ones again. I also love the Forges of Eregion. I love that quest. That's fun, even if you don't use Inspired Greatness.
For me, it sounds like I'm pushing the new content, but I'm really not. I'm really enjoying how Gondor is turning out, because it's something that the parts of Gondor we're working on right now are things that have never really been depicted anywhere. The most we've seen in the movies was we're going to come down from the mountains and there's Pelargir over there and it's on fire, and then that's it basically. And
so Dal Amroth looks beautiful. And
I was going to say the pictures I've seen of that.
Sea kind of the Sea Kings style.
Yeah, I was really happy with how Dal Amroth turned out, and how the whole thing right down to Pelargir at this point is looking that we're working on right now. Just seeing you look at the map and you can see where all the mountains are and where all the rivers in Lebanon are. And you don't really get a good feel for how it looks until you can actually get in there and sculpt all of those things and put down the fields of yellow flowers in Lebanon and put and figure out what kind of Mediterranean-y kind of stuff is in Belfalis and what the Ethier Anduin looks like with all the sandbars and
I want to see that. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's really been a lot of fun to see that develop. The island of Tolfalis looming out of the ocean ahead of you as you come down from the highlands. It's really, I'm very happy with that.
Goals. There will be goals.
There will be goals.
Right.
I have not been goals yet. I have goals.
And
There's a bug in my queue.
Right, bones.
Because in the Boromir song it says bones lying on at the shores of the sea, washed over the white bones or something. Beach of Bones, which I assume will then have wraiths that come up out of it. Sea wraiths.
You got to go around killing all the bones again.
Kill the bones.
So I think that's all the time we have right now for this. I'd really like to thank the both of you for coming out and participating in this. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks for having us. It's been fun.
Thank you for having us. And for, I think, the technical English department term or whatever about this would be these are paratexts. All these stories and drawings and artifacts that people make and invent. And if you look at where the culture is going, I think that we're moving from this, a passive culture of stare at the screen with a slack jaw to a participatory one, in which many hands and minds work, and so that's to me that's really exciting. I've never been on the side of I love my books. Right. I don't ever want to go away from my books, but I love it that I have this option to put the books down and go wander around Middle Earth. And when we finally get the full virtual reality goggles and everything, I'm signing up for that to go to Middle Earth too. Absolutely. And climb around there.
Yeah, I want to put on an Oculus and run around in the game myself.
Go through Moria and
absolutely
down over because you have some spots in the game too that are really, they can be scary. You can get yourself up to the edge of a cliff. And that was the part that is, I don't know if this is every player's experience in every different, the first MMO you play, but when I said I was having nightmares about bears, it was true, and I was also having dreams of seeing and walking through this stuff in a way that you just, as amazing and beautiful and evocative as books are, they don't engage your eyes in the way that the game does, and it's quite remarkable, and I hope that you guys find stuff to do after Gondor and Mordor too, and even Ruin and Harad where the stars are strange.
Where the stars are strange. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.